Hi there everyone. I wanted to create this short video on how to create, manage, and utilize a certificate. So the first thing I wanted to show you is if you are ever looking for a place to just play around with a variety of things in Moodle that you're not sure about, in the miscellaneous category, you're going to see a sandbox for testing site. And this is just a course that's been created where we can do anything we want. And so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make sure that course administration, my editing is on. And so the next thing I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to add an activity or a resource. So what I want to do now is I want to add a certificate. So what is the utility of certificates? Well, certificates allow a certain method of tracking the completion of a student completing a specific course and generating a certificate so that they can have and that is saved within the system. Now, certificates will become more important for all of us when we start utilizing the document management system. And the document management system is going to be the system that we're going to utilize if we have any courses that are mandatory, whether they be one-off or something that needs to be done in a repetitive nature. So an example would be the privacy and security training. That's something that we're going to need to do every year. So what we're going to do is add a certificate to that course, and then that certificate will go into the document management system. The perk of that certificate going there is that the document management system will be set up to remind certain people, the user, and then other people that administer or instructors of the course, that their certificate is about to expire and they need to repeat the course content. And so certificates are going to be a lot more important for us. So here's how we set one up. I'm going to go ahead and add a certificate. So I need to come up with the certificate name. So I'm just going to call that my set test certificate on July 2. And I see that it's riddled with spelling and grammar and typing errors, but again, I'm just creating a test. I can have an introduction or some information about this certificate, such as this expires annually and needs to repeat it every 365 days. And that's for the course. So next we're going to come down here to some issue options. So one option can be to email the teachers. And what that means is when the student is successful in achieving their certificate, it will automatically generate an email. The problem with choosing this feature, so my recommendation is always choose no. The reason for that is it will email everyone who is a clinical educator or an educator in our organization. And those people will get frustrated that that keeps coming to them, and so they will be upset. Instead, what we're going to do is use the email other feature. So you can enter any email address there, separated by a comma, of those who should be alerted when the student gets the certificate. So we can put a scott@stars.ca, comma, our gardener@stars.ca, and so forth. And these people will get an email saying, hey, this person's achieved their certification, and those only those people. So delivery, I would suggest that we always have it open in a new window and that we save the certificate always. In other words, it would then be saved to the course. It'll always be there, always be available. We can set that the students have to spend a minimum required number of minutes in the course if we want, if that's something that we think would apply. Next, let's get into the crux of the certificate. So do we want the date on it? Sure. And then we can decide when we want the date issued. So we'll have the date issued. There we go. We can decide what date format we want if we care. Print code. So what the code is it's a 10-digit code that can be printed on the certificate that's random. So it's a way of verifying the certificate with a code, a number that is then tied to the user. So if you're worried about security or people falsely creating certificates, we could do this. Otherwise, I would leave it as no. Do we want a grade from the course that they achieved on it? I would say the default would be no, but we can do that. Outcomes are basically objectives, and we can create outcomes or objectives in any of our courses, and then we can actually have those outcomes or objectives printed on the certificate as if to say the person has achieved them. So for example, here is some basic ones that are into the system, and we can have others. We can have a certain number of credit hours awarded, and we can have that printed on, such as 5. We can have the teacher's names printed on it, and so what that would do is every person that's an instructor in the course would have their name put on it. Now what that means is anyone with the permissions of clinical educator and above, all their names would go on it. So let's choose no, and then you can actually have some custom text on that if you want. And so for example, it'll give you a description here, and it'll also give you some code that you need to use if for some reason you want certain things, certain color or font. Probably won't put that there. So now let's get into the design. So these are going to be your typical sizes. It goes to an A4 non-embedded, and it gives you a description here of what all these are. So I'm just going to leave it as the default. Orientation of landscape, I'll leave that as default. A border image, so we can have a variety of these or none whatsoever. So maybe I'll just have fancy black. Border lines, do we want black, brown, blue, or green? In our organization, if we're going to have these at all, and it'll give a description here that they would be black. So we have a bunch of different watermark images. So watermark, remember, it's a light image that takes up the entire background of the certificate, that is. And so maybe you don't want any, but there's a few of them here if you want. And then you've got a signature image. So you can just put a line where somebody can sign the certificate if that's necessary. And then we have a seal or a logo. And so we have a few stars ones in here, and I'm just going to choose this one here for fun. Outcomes we mentioned before, these are the variety of ones you can have put on. And we're going to usually leave that empty. Common module settings, we're probably right now going to leave this empty. Restrict access, we're probably not going to do that. And here's how you can decide how the students get their certificate. Like, what do they have to do to get that certificate awarded to them? So we can have show as activity complete when conditions are met. And so then we can set up what those conditions are outside in the course. I'm going to leave that as do not indicate any activity completion whatsoever, just so we can see it right away. And now I'm going to save and display. So I have now created my certificate. So what would happen here is once a student has completed everything you require of them to obtain that certificate, such as passed a quiz, viewed certain lessons, etc., they are now able to get their certificate. So the second they click on this button, they're able to download their certificate if they want. In the future, if it's set up into the document management system, it can be tied in automatically to the DMS. And the certificate is saved into the system, so it'll always be there for that student and for the instructor to view. And lastly, if you set up email notifications, anyone you put in that list, the second they click on this, will get that email. So here's what I've done so far. So you can see I've got the black with the black lines, certificate of completion. I'm logged in as Carl right now, has completed the course for Sandbox for testing, the date, the credit hours, and there's that tiny little stars image there. And if anyone has any feedback or anything they'd like to see different on these, please let me know and I can work with our vendor, PR Emergency, to get this changed or edited. But that's kind of what our certificates look like now. So just coming back again, those are certificates. And now you can set them up and they will function in any sort of courses. And then my advice would be in the future, let's go ahead and add those to any courses that have a requirement for completing something by a certain date or time, or that completing it is mandatory or required, or that completing it needs to happen multiple times, such as the privacy and security training every year, so that when we start using the document management system soon, that the certificates are already there, the students are getting them, and it can be tied into the DMS. Last little thing is, again, if you want to edit your certificate, just click the down edit button, go to edit settings, and then all of these things are still here for you to edit. Great, I hope you enjoyed that little lesson on certificates, and hopefully we can make good use of this tool in the future. Thanks.